The opening verse of Psalm 91 speaks to a truth that resonates deeply in a world filled with uncertainty. It offers a promise that those who take refuge in God will be protected from harm, finding shelter under His mighty wings. This imagery evokes a sense of safety and warmth, like a child seeking comfort in the arms of a loving parent. In times of hardship, this psalm reminds us that there is a sanctuary we can always rely on, no matter how rough the storm gets. In today's world, where people face a multitude of fears, whether it's health issues, job insecurity, or the pressures of daily life, the need for a place of refuge is greater than ever. Psalm 91 offers a reminder that we don't have to go through life alone. By trusting in God's protection, we can find peace, knowing that He's watching over us, shielding us from the chaos of the world. The psalm continues by speaking of deliverance from deadly threats, whether it's disease, the terror of the night, or the arrows that fly by day. We're reminded that God's protection isn't limited to the physical. It covers every aspect of our being, body, mind, and spirit. The promise of deliverance isn't just about avoiding harm. It's about being preserved through the trials that inevitably come our way. It's easy to feel overwhelmed when life throws us curveballs. But the message of Psalm 91 offers reassurance that no matter what we face, God is a constant presence, capable of delivering us from even the most frightening circumstances. This psalm teaches us that true peace doesn't come from avoiding trouble. It comes from knowing that God will be with us through it all, offering His strength and guidance when we need it most. In this psalm, there's an assurance that if we make God our refuge and trust in Him, He will be with us in times of trouble. He promises to protect us and even lift us up when we're down. This unwavering support is a reminder that we don't need to face life's challenges alone. Just as we depend on close friends and family, we're called to lean on God's promises, knowing He is always faithful to provide what we need. This confidence in God's protection isn't passive. It requires action. We must actively choose to trust Him, even when the path ahead seems uncertain. God's protection is available, but we must first make the decision to place our trust in Him. This choice, however, brings an incredible peace that transcends the troubles we may face, and it's this peace that helps us walk forward in confidence, no matter the circumstances. Psalm 91 emphasizes that God is not just a passive observer of our struggles, but an active protector who steps in to shield us from harm. His faithfulness is not just a concept, but a lived reality for those who choose to trust in Him. When life throws its worst at us, God is ready to deliver us from the threats that seem insurmountable. Whether it's a sudden health crisis, financial difficulty, or emotional turmoil, the psalm assures us that God is ready and able to rescue us. In the hustle and bustle of daily life, it's easy to forget that we're not alone. We might face challenges that make us feel small, helpless, or isolated. But Psalm 91 calls us to remember that God is with us. He doesn't just watch from a distance. He is intimately involved in our lives. He stands ready to protect and deliver those who put their trust in Him. The psalm reassures us that God's protection isn't just about immediate rescue. It's about His larger plan for our lives. Even when things don't make sense or seem unfair, God's protection is still in effect, working behind the scenes. It's easy to trust when things are going well, but Psalm 91 challenges us to trust even when we don't understand the bigger picture. This trust doesn't mean that we won't face challenges. It doesn't mean that life will always be easy. But it means that no matter what happens, God has a purpose for it, and He will walk us through it. The promises in Psalm 91 remind us that we are never alone. God is actively working in our lives, even in times of hardship, and He will always be faithful to see us through. Psalm 91 also teaches that trust in God isn't passive. It's something we actively practice. It's not just about saying that we trust God. It's about living it out. When we choose to lean on God for protection, we acknowledge that we can't do it alone. This active trust means choosing faith over fear, action over passivity, and peace over panic. Living out this trust can be tough, especially when we face overwhelming odds. But the psalm encourages us that God's faithfulness will never fail. When we place our confidence in His promises, we're not just relying on our own strength, but on His infinite power. This is what gives us the courage to keep going, even when the road ahead seems uncertain or daunting. By living out our trust, we tap into the strength that comes from knowing God's protection is real. Psalm 91 speaks directly to our deepest fears by reassuring us that God's protection covers us from the dangers of life, whether it's a physical threat, emotional distress, or the fear of the unknown. God's refuge is an assurance that we can rely on in times of danger. This psalm paints a vivid picture of how God acts as our shield, guarding us from harm. The imagery of being covered by His wings is not just poetic. It's a reminder that in times of danger, we're never left to fend for ourselves. In today's fast-paced world, danger often feels right around the corner. It's easy to get caught up in the news or in our own worries, feeling like threats are lurking everywhere. But Psalm 91 offers a different perspective, one of safety, security, and protection. By trusting in God's promise to protect us, we can face life's dangers with a sense of peace and confidence, knowing He's standing guard over us. God's protection isn't just about physical safety. It extends to our hearts, minds, and souls. Psalm 91 reminds us that while we may face real-world threats, disease, financial struggles, or emotional pain, God's covering extends beyond the physical realm. He protects us from spiritual dangers too. In a world where fear and anxiety can easily take root in our hearts, this psalm offers a reminder that we're not just safe from external dangers, but from internal ones as well. This protection from both physical and spiritual harm is essential in a world that constantly challenges our peace of mind. Life throws curveballs that can shake us to our core, but the psalm assures us that God is ever present, ready to protect us from the turmoil inside and outside. It's this dual protection that allows us to walk through life with unwavering peace, even in the midst of chaos. Psalm 91 emphasizes that with God's protection, we can live fearlessly. It doesn't mean that we won't face challenges or hardships. It means that fear doesn't have to control us. The psalm encourages us to live confidently, knowing that God is standing between us and any harm. We're not promised a life free from trouble, but we're promised that with God, we can face trouble without fear. When adversity strikes, it's easy to panic or feel overwhelmed, but Psalm 91 invites us to shift our focus from the problem to the provider. By trusting in God's protection, we can face difficult situations with courage, knowing that He will not allow us to go through them alone. This fearless attitude isn't born from our own strength. It's rooted in the unshakable trust we place in God's promises to be with us in all things. One of the most comforting promises in Psalm 91 is the assurance of God's constant presence. In times of struggle, it's easy to feel isolated and abandoned. But the psalm reminds us that God is always near. He is not a distant deity, but a close and ever-present help in times of need. Whether we're going through sickness, loss, or emotional turmoil, God's presence provides us with the strength to endure. In today's world, isolation and loneliness are real struggles for many. It's common to feel disconnected from others, especially in moments of personal hardship. But Psalm 91 offers the powerful reminder that no matter where we are or what we're going through, we are never truly alone. God's presence is not dependent on our circumstances. It's constant and unwavering, providing a refuge in times of trial. Life can be unpredictable and full of chaos. We may face situations that seem out of our control, like sudden changes in our personal or professional lives, or unexpected crises that shake us to our core. Yet Psalm 91 assures us that even in the midst of chaos, God's protection is a steady force. His presence doesn't change based on our circumstances. It remains firm, offering us peace amidst the storm. The chaotic nature of the world today can easily leave us feeling uncertain and vulnerable. Whether it's political unrest, health crises, or natural disasters, life often feels like it's out of control. But God's promise to be our refuge and fortress reminds us that no matter how chaotic things may get, we are shielded by His presence. The psalm teaches us that peace isn't found in the absence of chaos, but in the confidence that God is with us through it all. The near presence of God provides not only protection, but also the strength we need to persevere. Psalm 91 reminds us that when we feel weak, we can draw strength from His proximity. It's not our own abilities that get us through the tough times, but His empowering presence. God doesn't just watch from afar. He is actively involved in our lives, giving us the strength to overcome challenges we wouldn't be able to face on our own. When we truly understand the depth of God's presence, we begin to realize that He is the source of our strength. He doesn't simply comfort us from a distance. He enters our struggles with us, walking beside us every step of the way. This intimate connection with God is the wellspring of courage, peace, and endurance that allows us to face the toughest of circumstances. His constant presence is the greatest source of support we can rely on. Psalm 91 isn't just a beautiful prayer. It's a powerful declaration of God's promises to protect, guide, and sustain us. In times of trouble, we often find ourselves grasping for something to hold on to, something that will ground us in the midst of uncertainty. Psalm 91 provides that solid foundation. By trusting in the promises found in this psalm, we can face life's challenges with confidence, knowing that God's word is not empty. He always fulfills what He says. In the hustle and bustle of daily life, it's easy to forget how vital God's promises are. But when we take the time to reflect on the words in Psalm 91, we are reminded of the strength and power contained in God's word. His promises are not just comforting, they are life-changing. They provide a blueprint for how we can live in peace, knowing that He has already provided everything we need for protection and strength. To truly experience the power of God's word, it's essential to meditate on it regularly. Psalm 91 calls us to reflect on God's protection and provision, And when we take the time to meditate on these truths, they become deeply rooted in our hearts and minds. This is more than just reading. It's about allowing His Word to transform us, to renew our minds, and to bring peace in the midst of turmoil. The more we internalize God's promises, the more we will see His power active in our lives. Meditating on Psalm 91 also allows us to build a strong spiritual foundation. It's easy to forget God's promises in the rush of daily life. But by taking time to pause and focus on His Word, we allow His truth to shape how we view the world. His promises aren't just for when things are going well. They are for every moment, especially in times of trouble. When we meditate on them, we draw closer to God and strengthen our faith. It's one thing to read and meditate on God's Word, but it's another to live it out daily. Psalm 91 teaches us to make God our refuge and fortress, not just in times of crisis, but as a daily practice. By consciously choosing to trust in His protection and provision every day, we begin to see the transformation in our lives. God's Word becomes more than just a set of comforting promises. It becomes the way we live, move, and breathe. Living out the promises of Psalm 91 is about more than just reciting the words. It's about letting them guide our decisions, actions, and mindset. Every challenge we face becomes an opportunity to trust more deeply in God's protection and to allow His peace to govern our hearts. By doing so, we not only experience His provision, but we also become a living testimony to the power of His Word in our lives. The ultimate message of Psalm 91 is one of confidence. It reminds us that when we choose to dwell in the presence of God, we are walking in a realm of divine protection that cannot be shaken. With God as our refuge and fortress, there is no need to fear the uncertainties of life. Whether we face physical danger, emotional pain, or spiritual attacks, we can walk confidently, knowing that God is with us every step of the way. This confidence doesn't come from our own strength, but from His faithful presence. Living with this kind of assurance changes everything. When we understand the depth of God's protection, fear begins to lose its grip on our hearts. We stop reacting to the challenges of life with panic and anxiety, and instead, we respond with faith and trust. The more we rely on God's promises in Psalm 91, the more confident we become in His ability to protect us, guide us, and keep us safe through every storm. Psalm 91 teaches us that God's faithfulness is not conditional. It's unwavering, even in the most difficult times. While the world may seem unpredictable, we can take comfort in knowing that God's protection remains constant. No matter what comes our way, we can trust that He will be there to uphold us. This faithfulness isn't just a promise for the future, it's something we can experience every day. God's protection is active in our lives right now, and His faithfulness is something we can rely on in every circumstance. When we face trials, it can be easy to question whether God is still with us. However, Psalm 91 reassures us that His faithfulness never wavers. In fact, it is precisely in the hardest times that God's presence becomes most evident. His protection isn't about keeping us from difficulties. It's about being with us through them, providing strength and peace in ways that only He can. God's faithfulness is the anchor that holds us steady in a world that often feels like it's constantly shifting. The final call of Psalm 91 is for us to live fully in the protection God offers. This is not just a passive promise. It's an active invitation to dwell in His presence, to take refuge in Him, and to trust in His protection. As we embrace this protection, we are called to share it with others. Our testimony of God's faithfulness can become a source of encouragement for those around us. Living in the fullness of God's protection means living with peace, confidence, and joy, no matter the challenges we face. Embracing God's protection is an ongoing journey. It's not something we only turn to in times of crisis. It's a lifestyle of trust, reliance, and deep faith. When we choose to live under His care, we can face each day with the assurance that no matter what happens, we are secure in His hands. This is the life God promises to those who dwell in Him, a life of peace, purpose, and unwavering protection.